So this is what you will need for this repair. Yep, so here's what you will need for this repair. You'll need a container to put your parts in. Just keep everything in one place so you don't lose anything. For this, I'm using this snap-on magnetic container with a closing lid. It's great because it has a lid that closes. There's buttons to open it up. And it will stick to anything that is made of ferrous metal, just like a toolbox. It is great. You're also going to need some shop towels. For this, I use heavy-duty shop towels. They did not sponsor me for this video. That's just my other roll ran out, and I just haven't opened that yet. Also, what you're going to need is a 5mm hex. That's the only hex that you'll need. You're also going to need a ratchet. For this one I use a quarter drive ratchet, quarter-inch drive. Optional is a quarter-inch drive electric ratchet. They're great. They speed up the process quite a bit, so you're not wasting any time. You're going to need a JIS screwdriver, not a Phillips, a Japanese industrial standard. This is a number 1 screwdriver. Okay, if I'm wrong, I'll edit it, but the number's wiped off the screwdriver. You're also going to need some sort of gasket scraper. So this is Mac Tools razor scraper. It's great. It's kind of dangerous because it uses a razor. You cut yourself, you cut your friends, you can rip your garments. This is a Carlisle gasket scraper. It is amazing. The blade is hard. It's not too hard. It's sharp. It's not too sharp. You're not going to cut yourself with it. If you reach a tough part of a gasket, you can use a hammer on it. You can tap on it lightly. You can tap on it hard. This thing will get through just about any gasket that you put it up against. It's amazing. What else do we got here? We got some seal pullers. One of the seal pullers broke. Worried because there's a lifetime warranty on these things. You're probably going to need a couple of picks, maybe a magnet. I don't have a magnet on me, so I didn't use one. So try to organize all this stuff here. You're probably going to need a pry bar. Possibly, it's optional if you don't have the clutch puller. The clutch puller is great. Comes with the engine. Some models, if you don't have it, it's not the end of the world. You can always use some pry bars. You could use a gear puller, a bearing puller. There's all kinds of options. You just want to make sure that you're gentle with it and you don't bend the housing. You don't bend it, you don't want to crack it. Another optional part is the world's smallest pliers and the world's smallest pry bar. They're great to have. You don't need to have them, but they work great for stuff like this. A corner scraper. This is something I made out of a piece of metal bar. It's great. It gets into the corners, it gets onto the edges. For some reason, the corner on this one is broke off because somebody else was using it. You're going to need a 14mm socket. You're also going to need a 19mm socket. This one is very specific. You want to have a thin-walled one. It doesn't have to specifically be a thin-walled socket, but the impact sockets are usually a little bit thicker and it probably won't fit in there. You're going to need some sort of lubricant. I use Super Lube. Sometimes, this time I used Royal Purple Assembly Oil. It's great. You're also going to need a 22mm wrench. 7/8 works. It's close enough that it's not going to strip out your clutch puller there. Fortunately, I don't have a metric wrench. of that size, you're probably going to need some needle nose pliers there. Oh, there's my melon in the pipe. Golly. So these are some needle nose pliers, needle nose style. They're actually called Talon Grip. These are the LN47 ACF, greatest pliers in the world. Optional for the spark plug if you have a spark plug like me with the hex that is just too big to actually fit a spark plug socket into the head of this thing, and you haven't had the chance to modify the engine head, you're probably going to need some of these Cobra Grip pliers. Also, you're going to need a tube of brown grease. You could also use red grease. I recommend everybody has a tube of brown grease, but some type of grease, just not blue grease. Blue grease is going to run thin. It's not going to work right. It's going to drip into your clutch. Brown grease is where it's at. 400 grams. You can get this from Napa for like 10 bucks, maybe less. I don't know. Could be 14. I'm not sure how much I paid for it, but that looks like all the tools that you're going to need. You're also going to need the seals to install. This one is the other side of the seal. What is that? It's a 14.8 by 27. And this one is 3.8 millimeters thick. The one that we installed is the exact same. It's 14.8 times 27, except it's a 7.5. And you're going to want to use the 7.5 on that side. My kit came with 2 seals, so I was going to have this one on hand. And then you're also going to need a gasket. I got the whole kit of gaskets. They came in bent. I actually got 2 gasket kits. They both came in bent. I straightened this one out a little bit, but you can see it's still bent there. The 2 halves of the paper are separating on this, just like that. It's shitty, but I get tired of ordering gaskets. That's just about everything you're going to need for this build. Oh yeah, most importantly, you're going to need an impact gun. You don't specifically need an impact gun. You'd also use an impact driver, such as this, but you do not want to use a drill. You definitely don't want to use a drill. It will not provide the torque that you are looking for to keep that clutch bolt in place where it's vibrating. So there we go. That's everything you're going to need. And possibly also some brake cleaner. Carb cleaner, gasoline. Just make sure that you use appropriate caution when using any of those items. And you're also going to need your mug. Just use your mug, put something in it, some coffee, some drink, anything you want. But it's good to have your mug. I want to isolate the power sources, so I want to turn off the gas. Turn that to the opposition where it is 90 degrees to the fuel line. You also want to disconnect the spark plug. You can even remove the spark plug completely, but it might cause difficulties. Today, I will be going over the crank seal replacement on a 2-stroke motorized bicycle engine. This is the crank seal that has already been replaced. It looks like it was not installed properly based on how it looked before. I'll have pictures, and also how it looks now. There's supposed to be some rubber covering this metal shield here that seems to have worn off, and when it was installed in the engine, it was kind of crooked. And that is probably what led to the crank seal leaking. So I already made a video on this. The quality wasn't what I would like it to be, so I'm going to make a new video. I will use pictures from the old video to show you what a leaking crank seal looks like. So, I noticed something was greasing all over my hyperdrive, and so I noticed this. Not entirely certain where it's coming from, but the bike seems to have an air leak because it won't idle when it's at a stop, and sometimes it revs over 4,000. So I'm guessing it's probably some sort of air leak, which is where all this sludge is coming from. Mess here. So I'm gonna have to end up taking this off, and maybe the other side, but I'm pretty sure it's coming from this side, and it might be the crank seal, which would be good because that's easy to change. Hopefully it's not the crank case, because that takes a couple hours of work just to get that apart and to put it back together. Yeah, so you can see this is my brand new tourney shifter that got all dirty, and it's still got the sticker on it. Wiping all this oil sludge off here. Great for the chain, not so great for looks. So noticed it's got all this crap all over my hyperdrive, which is probably really good for the chain, but it's also getting all over the tire and the rim too, which isn't good. Put this in gear so it doesn't roll away. And I'm going to figure out what's causing it, because it is, see, it's all over the crankcase, it's all over the frame. It's big. So let's begin. Today I will be using a 5mm Blue Point hex bit with my electric ratchet. So first you're going to start by doing all of the bolts on the reduction gear case here. And it's very important that you always wear safety glasses and you always use the right tool. But when there is no tool to be used, just always be careful. As there is a part in this assembly where the right tool may not even exist. So this is what looks like under the cover there. And I thought it was just the grease melting, but it looks like this is where it's coming from. Yeah, it turned out to be a lot more grease than I put in it. Kind of loose. And this is the clutch. So that's not good. This will eventually lead to nice and clean. I just greased it. So there is a little bit of grease on the bottom. So just gonna wipe this out so we don't have butterfingers. It's always a good idea to wear gloves so that you don't get a whole bunch of grease on your hands, because when crank seal is leaking, it spews a lot of grease, a lot, And so now that we have this clean, just gonna not set that on the floor actually. I'm gonna be putting all of my bolts and bits inside of this container here. It's great. It's plastic. It's a magnet on the back. The lid closes so that if it falls, you don't have to curse it anymore. And the only place on the bicycle that it sticks is to the gas tank, which is out of sight of the camera. But here we go. In order to do this, we'll have to remove both of these gears, the small gear and the big gear, because in order to put the small gear back in, it will be extremely difficult with the big gear here. So we're going to take the small gear out, the big gear out, we're going to put the small gear back in, we're going to put the big gear back in. It's a lot easier to put the big gear in when the small gear is in. It's just that it causes a slight rotation when you're fitting them together, enough that it will mess up the woodruff key. So actually we're going to take the big gear out first, because we need the space behind the big gear in order to get this guy out without damaging the engine. Most of the tools I'm going to be using today are snap-on, except for a few that I don't have, like a JIS screwdriver. This is a so you need that for all of the Phillips looking screws on this engine. They might not be visibly marked, some of them are, but I know that all of these screws are JIS. That's a Japanese industrial standard. If you use a Phillips on them, you will most likely end up stripping out the screw. So I'm going to undo that, put that in the bin, and grab my pliers, and you just want to grab the outside of this. It's probably a good idea to mark the position and count the rotations. So I'm just going to use a red paint marker here to paint over that. Now we can get to turning this thing off. So let's continue turning this. You can actually turn it by hand now. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. So here we are. I'm just going to take this starter nut all the way off, and you want to hold pressure on the clutch plate because it is spring loaded. It will fly right off. And here is the clutch plate, just like that. The clutch spring, very important. Get all those parts into the part bin there. Now you want to remove these clutch pads because they will fall out, possibly get lost, and then you won't have as much friction on the clutch plate that you want to have. Not good to be missing clutch pads. So just take them out one by one with the world's smallest pliers. There we go. Just put those in the parts bin. So now for this part, you're going to want to use a impact driver or an impact gun with a 19mm socket. So I'm just going to get out my 19mm socket here. And put that on my 3/8 impact. It will also fit a 3/4 socket, but this is a metric item here. So I'm just going to start the lowest setting. Just take this piece here off, which is holding the entire clutch reduction gear in place. Okay, first gear doesn't work. Let's try a second. There. Came right off. You don't want to use a drill with that because a drill can actually cause fractures. Using a 90-degree pick to remove this lock washer here. I'll also use this 45-degree pick to help with it. It's very tricky. Using a magnet might be a little bit easier, so we will just put that in the dish there. We'll just stick these over here, and now, yes. So with this part, we're going to need the clutch puller that luckily came with this engine. Looks like this. It has a bolt in the middle, and you just kind of loosen this out here, screw this into here, there it is, all the way, and you just want to torque it on there. Let's see what we got. So I think it is a 14. So I use a 14mm socket. This one has, I believe, it is a 19mm. Bigger than 19. So this one, yeah. So what I have here is a 22mm wrench, and just like that, it comes right off. Now under here there is a key. That you want to make sure it doesn't fall out when you take the clutch pad, or when you take the clutch out. Let's set this over here for now. Stick this over here. And there we have the key that I was talking about. This guy right here is a Half Moon Woodruff key. Definitely do not want to lose that. There's two of them present in this repair, and you don't want to get either of them mixed up. There's only one which can get mixed up because the other one is smaller than this, and this one won't actually fit in there. So for this far, we can start by removing this gasket. This one fell off very easily, but I will still go over the method of removing it. You can use a gasket scraper like this. You can use a gasket scraper like this, which is actually the best gasket scraper I've ever used. It's great for all types of gaskets. If you get a stubborn gasket, you can use a hammer to scrape it all off. It's not sharp. It doesn't damage aluminum parts easily, and it works great. This one, on the other hand, uses a razor. It's good, but it can be dangerous. So whenever you're not using it, keep it in safe mode. That way you don't cut yourself, you don't rip your garments, and don't damage your workpiece. So there, just scraping off the last bits of gasket. I'm going to get all of them off, because if you put a new gasket on and there are pieces of the old gasket, it is going to mess up the clearance. Because that is one thing that gaskets do. They seal from the outside, and they also add a little bit of space to whatever it is in between. So I have a little bit of excess grease here. I'm just going to wipe that away. I grease my reduction gears with automotive bearing and chassis grease. It works great. It reduces a little bit of friction that you would otherwise find. So what I'm going to do here, actually, just to make it a little bit easier, I'll pick the bike up. Just going to turn this so that the woodruff key is on top. Because with this gear out, the back wheel will spin this shaft freely. And so now we are here. Take this bolt out. It comes with the star nut, or the lock washer. You don't want to lose that. And this is the slightly tricky part. You can use a pry bar like this, or you can also use a pry bar like this, a little bit bigger. Might even have to use them both together, but you have to be very, very careful when prying up against the side of the housing that you do not put too much force on it, because this is aluminum and it can easily crack. So you just sneak this in behind there, back this up against the bolts or the plate. It's a little bit more sturdy back here, but you still don't want to apply too much force, and just kind of nudge it from behind. So actually, for this I can use, might be able to use, yeah, you can actually use clutch pulley for this as well. Which is much safer. Just flip it around, drive that end in, and away you go. So this is a 14mm with a 22mm wrench. Just slide that there, and hold the main part, tighten the bolt. Be very careful, because there is a woodruff key behind this that you also do not want to lose. And it's still on there nice and snug. This is what that gear looks like. It's a taper fit, which means one side of the hole is going to be smaller than the other side, but this is where the bolt goes, so it's going to be hard to mess up. And those are the two uses for the gear puller that comes with the engine. I'm going to set my ratchet down nice and easy. I put this in the parts bin, and I'm going to clean off my pliers a little bit here. And I'm just going to pluck this woodruff key out of here. So this is what this one looks like. It's a little bit smaller than the other one. It's a half moon woodruff key, and put it in the parts bin for now. So you don't actually need the pry bars for this. That could be dangerous, but if you don't have clutch puller with your engine, could be handy. So now this is the crank gear right here, the crankshaft seal, and that is what it should look like, just how it is. I'm going to get a close-up view of this. So that is exactly what it should look like. Sitting flush with the face and not crooked. So I'm going to show you how to remove that. This is the one that was removed. The face has been melted off it, and when it was in there, it was sitting a little bit crooked when I noticed it. So here we go. For this, I'm going to use a seal puller. It looks like a little tiny spoon here. It's flat, rounded, and it's something that you can slide in here relatively easy. To pull this seal out, it's now we gotta get rid of there. Okay, so just broke one of my seal pullers. Get another one here. Let's try this. So this is a straight seal puller. I'll wedge this in here. Get this crank seal out. There we go. It's starting to come out there. There we are. So that is the new crank seal. This is what it should look like. There's a spring in there. You want the spring to remain intact, because that is what keeps it tight along the shaft. And there's this flap here that makes the seal. So I'm just going to clean this off. I'm going to remove the grease from the housing there. And inside there, behind the seal, is the bearing. And if the crank seal is leaking, oil will be spewing from the bearing, and it will get all over the side of the bike. It was greasing all over my hyperdrive here. I'll have pictures of that. I'm just checking the integrity of the seal to make sure that it is still good. Clean it off a little bit. I am going to be using some, where is it here? There it is. Got some Royal Purple Assembly Oil that is going to help me install this crank seal here. So, I'm going to add a little bit of this. Do the shaft. Actually, one thing that can happen with a bad crank seal is it can melt to the seat bore, which is where it sits in here, and it won't be clean metal seat. I'm just going to wipe my hands off here real quick. Show you. There will be pieces of rubber stuck all around the edge here. And if that happens, you'll want to clean them out without scratching the seat bore, because then if those are there, your crank seal will not seal properly, and you'll get everything back together and realize that it didn't work. You might even think that that's not the problem. So, in order to fix that, there are a few ways. A lot of them are very sketchy. I have a specialized tool here that can help. It's a metal scraper that I made with a piece of metal bar and a grinder. So there's two edges on it here. One on the front, one on the side, and it is a depth of 3/8 of an inch. No specific reason for that. Other than this, not really sure what could be used. You could use an X-Acto knife, but you'd want to be very, very careful with it, because again, you don't want to scratch the housing at all. So maybe something like this. We'll see if this would fit in there. Maybe, if you had to. Be best to use something with a handle so there's less chance of cutting yourself. This is probably, having something like this, it's a custom tool, but it's probably the best one for scraping out the seat bore here. So if you want to go nice and easy, piece of sandpaper might help. If there is a lot of rubber, that would be fairly difficult, and it would seem like you're not getting anywhere. So probably best to use a straight seal puller with that, because it broke my curved seal puller. It's a lifetime warranty, so I'm not too worried about it. I'll get another one sometime in the future. Now back to setting the seal. So this is Royal Purple Assembly Oil. There's a few other things that you can use. Probably even just use 2-stroke oil. Use grease. Use super lube. This stuff's good. It's expensive though. For the purpose of this, I'm just going to be using some Royal Purple Assembly Oil. You could use a brush to get that in there. The only issue with that would be you don't want to leave any of the brush hairs in the way. So this time I'm going to be using the back side of the seal puller. Just going to line that with some Royal Purple there. And I'm just going to spread it around the seat bore. It's a nice thick oil. Leaves a nice coat of grease. But The only thing you want to have here is the crank seal and a little bit of grease to help it seat easily. Get some under the shaft here. Actually, yeah, I'm going to turn this crankshaft a little bit once I get the seal in. So getting a proper seal out is a lot more difficult than getting an improper seal out, because this one pretty much fell out as soon as I looked at it. This one was actually very difficult. I'm almost concerned about its integrity, but it should be fine. Now I'm going to coat the seal as well. A little bit of oil. Yes, this is safe because it is an oil seal. It's made to protect against oil leaking outside of the engine and air leaking in. So I'm just going to wipe that around. Make sure you don't get any dirt on the seal, because that would wear it out a little bit quicker. So now that you have it, place it on like there. It should just press right in. If not, this is likely what is happening here. You can use a socket, most likely a deep socket, and it looks like the 19mm will be the right one there. So I'm going to use a dead blow hammer for this, and you just line the socket up like that. And tap it. You can also use a seal driver. They're difficult to find and they can be expensive, so I'm not going to use one, but 19mm socket seems to work pretty good in the absence of the right tool. You wouldn't want to use a punch to put that in, or an alignment pin. You don't want to use that. Now I'm just going to check it to make sure that it's set, that it is seated properly. Yep, looks like it is. And make sure that that flap is kind of flapped outwards. Which is basically how it'll go on when you're pushing it into the engine, right into the seat bore. And make sure that it is sitting evenly. You don't want it sitting unevenly. You don't want it protruding from the face. This looks like it's sitting pretty good there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the crankshaft a little bit so that the woodruff key is on top. So for this, I'm not going to use an electric ratchet. I'm going to use a regular ratchet, and to turn this bolt inside the shaft till it's facing upwards. And it's probably easier if you turn it a little bit further and then turn it back. going to need the electric ratchet to get that bolt out of there. You got to turn it really fast in order to not turn the crankshaft with it a little bit. So now that we have the seal installed, it is time to put everything back together. So here, I'm just going to grab the world's smallest pliers once again. Wipe them off a little bit here. Going to get a fresh shop towel, just in case. And then we'll put that over there. Hang that up there. This back. I'm going to use Super Lube as the example. Secure spot. So now I have the bucket here. Grab the skier. Grab this woodruff key, and we're also going to need the lock washer that goes with it. So that's there. Set that there, and there it is. Use the world's smallest pliers here. They're slightly magnetized, which makes it a lot easier. So, yeah, we're also going to need this bolt here. So, I'm just going to line this up here. Setting this gear back onto the crankshaft can be slightly difficult because this woodruff key it likes to tilt when you're trying to slide anything onto it. So now that that is set, hang that there for a minute. I'm going to use a brush actually just to clean all the old grease off of the skier. So just going to use a tray with a little bit of gasoline in it to dissolve the oil. Gasoline makes a really good solvent. And you just want to brush all of that old oil out of the teeth, out of the gears. Get any debris out of where it sits on the shaft. And then you're going to want to dry it off with a shop towel before you apply some grease. Now, when you have open gasoline, it's a good idea to control any flames, not have any flames present, and make sure that it's not near any ignition sources. So, I'm just using a brand new shop towel to clean all of the teeth out, get all that old grease out of there. These come greased from the factory, but they don't put a whole lot on, so I always put nice fresh layer on there. These teeth are somewhat helical, and that is the entire reason why we took the larger reduction gear out, because it likes to twist a little bit when you're installing it, and if it's in the large reduction gear, it will fall out of the keyway. So that is cleaned up pretty good. Use this brush, get any debris out of the teeth, just brushing with the grain, make sure there's nothing in there. And here we have the key. In order to install this properly, you might actually need a pry bar, something that you can reach in behind just to keep this from tilting upwards. Oh yes, so I'm going to grease this before I do anything else. I just used a gloved finger, get a little bit of this multi-purpose extreme pressure. It's a wheel bearing and chassis grease from Napa. You can pick up a tube for probably $10 at Napa. This stuff is great for stuff like this. It's not too thin. If it's too thin, it will melt, and then you won't have any grease on the teeth when you after about 30 minutes, and then it'll just be metal grinding on metal, and they will wear out a lot faster. So just brush this grease on with the grain. I'm gonna have to go back for some more. Get this in here. There, that's pretty good. Still a little bit of grease in all of the teeth there. I'm going to wipe the excess off my hands. Now you can get to installing this. So, checking on this side, making sure the keyway is up. I'm going to put my pry bar behind here. Actually, I have the world's smallest pry bar. I think I'm going to use that. It has a little bit better clearance on it. Make sure there's no debris. So I'm going to want to start with it slightly angular. That way it'll slide on a little bit easier. And just kind of hold it down as you push it on. And use a light, you can see behind it a little bit, just enough to make sure that the woodruff key didn't push all the way out. And also check by turning it, and it seems to be installed properly. So now let's put this lock washer, I think it's called the star washer, put that in, start turning this by hand. I'm going to get my electric ratchet here. Just going to drive it in real good, make sure it's... I'm going to tighten that again later on. So now we have the actual clutch gear here. We're going to install that. Looks like this without any of the pads or whistles. And what we need for this one is the parts bin. I'm going to use the world's smallest pliers to get all of these parts out here. Clutch plate seems to be covering up the woodruff key here. So You get the nut, the washer. You don't need to worry about the clutch plate, the spring, or the star nut yet. Actually just going to use broken seal puller. Yeah, I'll get another one of these. It's on warranty. There we go. That's kind of, that's not really a purchase there. There we go. Got some purchase on it. So, this is the second woodruff key. You will know if you got them mixed up at this point. Actually, it's impossible to get them mixed up in this order because this one won't fit over here. So I'm just going to slide this guy in here. Use the world's smallest pliers to set this in. There. Seated pretty good. Set that here for a minute while I grease up this clutch gear. I'm going to have to clean it up. Same way as the small one. Just get yourself some brake cleaner or some sort of solvent and just brush it all out with the grain from the teeth. So just kind of brushing like that. There's a little bit of grease on the back here. I'm going to wipe that away. And I'm just going to use my brush to kind of scrape any grease that's set in there. Put a little bit of a solvent on there. And I'm going to use a shop towel to dry this off, pick up any remaining grease that is on there. You don't want any grease in the clutch pad seats, so you're going to want to make sure clean this over really good. You can use brake cleaner, you can use carb cleaner, throttle body cleaner. Lots of really great options. And you want to make sure that there's no solvent in the teeth when you go to grease these. It's going to make the operation a lot smoother if you put some grease there, and they will last a lot longer. Getting the grease out of the back of the clutch plate, that is proving to be a little bit difficult. So I have some gunk here. I don't have very much of it, so hopefully this works. Okay. So if you put a shop towel in one of the seats, just turn it around. It seems to do a pretty good job. It's not going to get all of the grease out that way. But should be good enough. So now we have this all cleaned off, gonna get the tube of grease once again here, and just get a little dabble of that, and I'm going to run this just across all the teeth, nice and quick, because this one is actually going to squirt grease everywhere. Well, it won't really get it everywhere, but it will squish out of all these teeth. Right at the end there, we will have to clean it out a little bit. But we just want to make sure that there's a lot of grease going around this thing, a little bit in each and every tooth. Every tooth needs to have a little bit of grease. Makes it work a lot smoother. That one actually doesn't have any grease in it. There we go. Special trick for you. Get some grease in there. Nice brown grease. You can also use red grease. You'd use blue grease. Blue grease is really thin, I find. Might be able to find a thick blue grease, but it's pretty low scale in terms of grease. You can find a green grease. That stuff's pretty common, pretty good. Does the trick. I just prefer brown grease myself. So kind of lost focus there a little bit. There. Good. So I'm going to install the clutch plate reduction gear now. Just going to clean some of the grease off the back of this thing. Get it off the edge here. And get it off the front edge as well. I'm going to have to do this again because when the teeth interlock, it's going to squish. So, I'm going to remove this nut, remove the lock washer, put this aside. I'm going to get the world's smallest rod once again, and it's gonna, okay, doesn't help that it's magnetized. So that's sitting nice and flat. This clutch gear on here. And it goes on. There we go. That's in there. I didn't need the world's smallest pry bar for this. And I'm going to put this lock washer on here, get this nut. There is no front or back on this, so it doesn't matter which way it goes. Just turn it on by hand, and this is the really important part. about this whole build. You want to get it on the first few threads by hand. Then you want to grab an impact gun or an impact driver. You don't want to use a drill because it won't actually torque it. If this isn't torqued properly, I don't know exactly what the torque spec is on it. But if it's not torqued properly, it will loosen up while you're driving and it'll push the clutch plate out, and you'll be stuck in neutral until you can get it properly torqued. And that's not good. I want to make sure the torque gun is in forward. Probably want to start in first gear like that. And it's a 19mm socket. Let's turn it on. Maybe put the setting 2, get 50 foot-pounds on it, maybe. You don't want to put too much because it'll strip the threads out. But that should be good. I don't think that'll loosen up when I'm driving. And it turns. So that's what you want. Now there is a right tool for the spark plug. I'm going to remove the spark plug from this right now just to release the compression on it. But the spark plug I have in there isn't a perfect spark plug. I'm going to have to modify the cylinder head on this. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. Because it's supposed to, there's really only enough room for a 5/8 hex on there. And the thread depth is 1/2 inch. You'll probably want a resistor type spark plug with a low resistance. High resistance could be good too, but you'll get a stronger spark with a low resistance spark plug. You probably don't want to use a non-resistor spark plug because a lot of people like to use speedometers on these bicycles, and the non-resistor will interfere with the electronics. So when you start going fast, you won't know how fast you're going. It can be kind of dangerous. But for now, all I could find was this one with a big hex on it. They don't have a 1/2 inch thread depth with a 14mm thread and a 5/8 hex in any spark plug that I found. If somebody knows of a spark plug with those specifications, please let me know, and that would be great. But I've searched quite a long time for this, and I have not been able to find one. So I'm going to remove the spark plug now and release that compression. Taking the spark plug out here just to release compression so that I can turn this guy over. And as you can see, all of the grease is kind of squirting out from the teeth. I'm going to get stuck in the small gear there. And just use a shop towel. Clean it off from the sides there. So that it doesn't make all this mess when you're driving. Because a little bit of it could get onto your clutch pads, and that wouldn't be good. It would burn off pretty quick, but it would make some smoke. So I'm just going to turn this around a few more times. Put this heavy duty shop towel in there. There we go. That should be good. So now what we have here, set this there, set I'm just going to screw the spark and separate the bolts from the clutch pads. So, stick this back onto the gas tank. Get the cover bolts back in there. And now I'm going to use the world's smallest pliers to reinstall the clutch pads. You'll notice that the clutch pads are mushroomed a bit. Let's get this up close. Mushroomed a bit, so it's going to be wider on the top, that's supposed to be outward, than it is on the seat. So you just grab each clutch pad here, figure out what's the top and what's the bottom, and just set them in place. So you can see it's a little bit wider on top. I think that's where they get squished into the clutch. They will sit fairly loose, that's normal. That's okay, the clutch plate will hold on. And this is a good time. This is the first time the clutch pad has been exposed. You can clean them off with a little gasoline. And then that works. Never press on. Oh, how did I go to you? There you go. Put your hand up. Put it once. And you can go which way you want, because there's a bunch of concave marks on contacts, any contacts, and you don't want them to be circular or on the outside. So, side, very straightforward which side is out, which side is not. That's alright. They work either way, but I'll just set these in one by one. So, it seems to be sticking out a little bit more than the rest. Hopefully that doesn't cause any problems. I have a feeling it'll squish right in once it's used. Should have that very long. There we go. So now we got all the clutch pads in. We want to make sure that we wipe all the grease out of the way before we put the clutch pads in. So now what we have is the spring, the clutch plate, and the star nut. So the orientation is going to be slightly different than before. And so we just hold this clutch plate in there. And I had 5 turns on my star nut, so I'm just going to want to count that. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I had my clutch engaged this whole time. If you don't have the clutch engaged, it will probably be a lot harder to turn them. And I'm going to use the big Talon grip pliers here, just to turn it that last little bit. So now we have a very small screw, but it is certainly not the world's smallest screw. And use the JIS screwdriver for that. And we just drive that in to keep the clutch in place. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to release the clutch. And it is engaged. It is fully engaged, which is what you want. Engage the clutch. So, when the clutch is disengaged, the plate is still engaged, which means I'm going to have to turn this thing a little bit more. pliers here. I'm going to have to unscrew it. 1/6 of a turn. Just gonna put these in the bag. This in the bag. These are just all the tools I've been using. I'm gonna show you what's been used for this whole thing. So now, actually, before I put that screw back in, see that it is engaged here, and on the 3rd setting of the clutch it is free. There we go, that's what you want. Let's try 2nd setting. It's pretty good. That is definitely good right there. What do I want to do? I'm going to leave it like that because that's how it's supposed to be set. But you get back how it was. Make sure we're still in focus. There we go. So it seems to be, the orientation's a little bit different, but these markings are just going to give you a slight reference point as to where it should be. It'll speed things up a lot and hopefully save you a bit of a headache trying to set this thing. So I need Talon grip pliers once again. These are the ACF 47. Oh, LN47 ACF. Greatest pliers in the world, hands down. They have the best grip. They always line up. Slip joint. You can get a real good purchase on pretty much anything with these, big or small. Amazing pliers. Best if you're going to spend some money on a set of pliers on any tool. That's probably one of the best tools that you can buy. So there we go. We have the screw back in place there. Now I have a new gasket here I'm going to use, but unfortunately there was some sort of packing error and the gasket got bent. The gasket is 100% bent. For me, that is unacceptable, but I'm gonna have to accept it because it bent twice. Like, I ordered it twice, and they both came in bent. Don't know what's going on there. So if anybody knows a good place to get straight gaskets for these machines, let me know. Like one time I ordered it with a few other parts, and it was just sandwiched in with a box of French vanilla, and it was bent. And then I ordered a second time just on its own, and it was bent. So I don't know what's going on there. Sent me a damn bent gasket. So best way to do this, I find, is to set it like this, get all the screws in first, check it from underneath, make sure everything's lining up properly, because if it's not lined up properly, the clutch will grind right through this, and it seems like it's not lining up properly because it's bent, which is kind of frustrating. So here we go. Just trying to make sure that everything stays lined up, because this gasket is notorious for becoming disheveled. Same with these threads. If you strip these threads out, that's completely natural, because they're very weak threads. You don't want to under torque them, because it will fly out when you're driving on the vibration. I don't want to use my electric ratchet to tighten these in, because it might strip the threads. I am actually going to make a video on thread repair for this. Just not in this video, because it's already almost an hour long. So here we are, because I know this thread for sure is stripped, and this one is starting to strip. So if you're also having that problem, just pick up some 5mm Healy coils, and you'll want the whole set, because you need the drill, you need the special tap, you need the Healy coils, you need the setting tool, and then there's a punch that comes with it that could almost use anything that fits in there, but pretty sure you're not, like, it would be more expensive to buy all that stuff on its own. Might as well just get the whole kit. These are all metric bolts here. So I'm gonna start with this one. This one, it just keeps spinning. It keeps spinning. It's in there. It's got some purchase, but the threads on that are going to have to be repaired, and I'm going to make a video on that in the future. So here we are, we got everything. There is going to be a little bit of grease resting around the edge of this thing naturally. You want to use a really thick grease to make sure that it doesn't liquefy and drip down into the clutch. That's why I use brown grease. It's very thick. It stays where you put it for the most part, unless something throws it off, and the spinning clutch will most definitely throw the grease around a little bit. So this actually took about 20 minutes less than the last time I did this, because I know how to do it. And there we go. I just gotta make sure I tighten the spark plug in once again. And you gotta turn the gas on, plug the spark plug in. If you have a RPM meter, just clamp that back onto the wire, and you're good to go. So there we are. Let me know. Yeah, so this is where it was leaking a bunch of oil all over my hyperdrive. I've since cleaned it off, but I'll have pictures of what it looked like, what to look for, and if that's happening to you, it's gonna be your crank seal, most likely. Hopefully the bearing didn't blow out and blow out the crank seal. I'm not too shy to pull the bearings out of this thing and replace them, but I just haven't done that this time. So there you are.